Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heart of the Matter. I am your host, Elizabeth Vargas. Great to have you here. Hope you are enjoying a beautiful fall wherever you are. I know I am. This is my favorite season. And I've been reading a lot in the news about reviews of this new show, Dope Sick, that's streaming on Hulu, all about the opioid crisis and the Sackler family who own Purdue Pharma, getting excellent reviews. As you may remember, I interviewed Beth Macy, who wrote the book Dope Sick, on which the series is based. You can listen to that in one of our prior episodes. She's incredible. But the series, listen, in the reviews, they say the Sacklers have been very public about saying they think they bear no responsibility for the opioid crisis. And of course, they're likely never to face trial because of the sweeping protections that have been built into the bankruptcy settlement that dissolved Purdue Pharma last month. The series creator, though, said that this series is the trial that should have happened. So I don't know about you, but I'm going to be tuning in to watch the series because the book was so good. And do listen to Beth Macy if you didn't get a chance to listen to our previous podcast with her. But on to this week's podcast and our special guest, Cheryl Burke. I've been a huge fan of Cheryl's for 23 years because for 23 seasons, she's been one of the champion dancers on Dancing with the Stars. Been in the news a lot because she tested positive for COVID, and she and her partner, Cody Rigsby, one of my favorite Peloton instructors, by the way, did their first ever they competed remotely, not even together, because they were in quarantine from having COVID. They just returned last week to the live stage. They are healthy and back. And, she's the first ever back-to-back champion on that show. So if you're a Dancing with the Stars fan, you know her well. She was also in the news, though, a few months ago because she announced that she was 3 years sober. She talked about the fact that her drinking had gotten out of control. Some of the tabloids were calling her or describing her as dancing with the bars, a nice little takeoff on the show, Dancing with the Stars. She quit drinking when she got engaged to be married, and she was very honest about it. She talks about it on a podcast that she does with AJ McLean with the Backstreet Boys, who was on Dancing with the Stars and is also in recovery. Their podcast is called Pretty Messed Up, which is a great title, I think. And she's also recorded several YouTube videos in which she talks about how hard it is for her sometimes to stay sober. We're very honest about the fact that she was recently on a trip with her fiance and desperately wanted to drink. Anyway, she's incredibly honest about her relationship with alcohol. I think a lot of women especially might relate to her story. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Cheryl Burke. Cheryl Burke, welcome to Heart of the Matter. It's so great to have you here.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Elizabeth. I'm a huge fan, and thank you so much for just being so open and honest with your life and your story. It's definitely inspired me to tell mine. So,
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. That's exactly why I told it. You and I were just talking, and we figured out I can't even count how many times I must have interviewed you on Good Morning America
right.
for
I
Dancing
know.
with the Stars because whoever was eliminated had to, come on our show the very next
Same hair
morning.
and makeup. Yep.
Exactly. Exactly.
Barely
I always
washed our
felt for you
face.
guys. It was like they must really just want to go to bed or get up and have a
Yeah.
cappuccino someplace. But
Right. The last thing we want to do
um,
is put a costume on and dance our elimination dance, right?
I know. I
But you know
know.
what? It's great memories for sure.
You are the classic example of so many people that I know in recovery. The person that everybody looks at and thinks their life is golden. She's gorgeous. She's talented. She's on national television. She's winning awards and winning tournaments and winning Dancing with the Stars. She's a household name. She has it all. And yet, it's a great example that no matter how shiny and perfect somebody's life may look, it really isn't that way underneath. Nobody's life is perfect. And you had a lot of really tough things happen to you in your life that you've been very open about. Why talk about them?
You know, I don't know any other way, and I do have to thank my mom from when I was like 4 or 5 years old, from the moment my parents divorced to being sexually molested as a little girl, she got me into therapy right away. So into talk therapy. So
Mm,
it taught me right away just to how important it is to talk about your feelings. But what I was missing was feeling the feelings then, right?
yeah.
Like I could talk about my feelings. I could talk about it. I could talk almost about anything that has happened to me. And there's a weird disconnect that I've just realized that like I feel like I'm telling someone else's story
Mm,
sometimes, right? And this was all happening when I was drinking. So there was a huge disconnect. And now, being sober for 3 years, it has really, wow, it's been scary, but it's been so enlightening at the same time
yeah.
because, like, I've been taught not to feel my feelings really. I'm a competitor. Am have to have that poker face. I come from my mother who is Filipina and, she was taught her belief system was taught to not really, vulnerability equals weakness. Brene Brown, we know that that's not true, right? And like, it's really difficult to show feelings. Like,
Yeah.
in just society today, like crying is a bad thing for some reason or anything mental health related. Now we're just opening it up.
No, but you're right. Like I always feel very embarrassed when I cry. I find it
Yes.
very, very deeply embarrassing. And I
Yeah. Do you
can't even
cry
tell
by
you why.
yourself?
Of course, but I
Mm.
find like anytime I get, I used to do interviews with people and I would interview them about, sometimes some really, really difficult things.
Yeah.
And it would be so hard. I would feel my eyes begin to fill up with tears and I would like dig a pen
Stop
into
it.
my,
Yeah.
yeah, no.
Yes.
First of all, it's not about me, which is
No,
true.
no.
It's not about me. It's about whoever I'm interviewing, but it
Right.
felt embarrassing to lose
Yeah.
control of my emotions. I think I just expressed why it feels scary because I've lost
Absolutely.
control a little bit.
And that is scary. I'm also a control freak. My mother is a control freak, and it's like that's hard to live in that uncertainty and to be okay with not being okay. And that's been difficult for me.
Yeah. A friend of mine once said when we were talking, he's a doctor, and we were talking about people using drugs or alcohol. And he said, you don't just numb the anxiety when you drink, you numb your whole life. And it's really something. And I thought about that just
Oh,
now
I
when you
just got
talked about,
chills.
yeah, when you talked about the
Yeah.
fact that only after stopping drinking and getting sober did you really start to really feel what was happening in your life. You have said that you drank to not feel, you drank to numb.
Absolutely, for sure. From my social anxiety to living here in Los Angeles, going to red carpets, like that is not something that I will ever get used to, right? I'm very blessed to have opportunities, absolutely, and that doesn't go unnoticed. But I am an introvert at heart. Like I love being home. In a weird way, I loved when we were locked down. I know that sounds horrible, but like it soothed my soul in a really
Mm-hmm.
unhealthy way. Like me and my husband just being in this house, like, and then knowing that no one else is out, so then you don't have to feel guilty, right? But back to why I was drinking, it was just an escape from my own reality. I couldn't, there's no way, like living in that like lonely, maybe uncomfortable uncertainty, like maybe knowing that your real friends, do you have any here in this town? Do you not? Are people only approaching you because they want whatever that they want? Like I start to analyze. My brain is so crazy, Elizabeth. Like it will go, 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 go. And I
Yeah.
realize too now I have insomnia since I've been sober. Like I used to sleep like a baby when I was drinking, obviously. Naps, 10 hours, wake up, do it again, 7 nights a week. I was a ballroom by day type girl and then partier club goer at night, like for 10 years in a row.
Mm.
Mind you, I didn't start drinking until I was 21. I lived a very Olympic like lifestyle, I guess, when I competed before moving to Los Angeles to do Dancing with the Stars. And there was none of that. But I know that feeling. My coach is an addict, right? So like I had those tendencies, like the all or nothing, black or white, no gray. Like it's very, and then super just mean to myself, to be quite honest, and just like all or nothing. And this is how I would bully my friends when I would drink with them. Like, oh, you're going home? Like, no, you drink more. And like, I made promises to myself I would never drink alone. Then that started to go away. Or I wouldn't drink before 5 p.m. No drinking on weekdays. It just never stopped. It became so that my tolerance was just nothing got me drunk.
Right.
I was
Right.
a functioning drunk for sure.
You have said that being a functioning alcoholic was the scariest part, that you were drinking as much as you were drinking and yet still showing up and doing a spectacular job, at a on a demanding show on national television in front of,
Yeah.
a lot of people dancing away.
Yeah. I mean, like, all I can say about that is my thoughts, like my thoughts never got in my way when I was drinking because I was numbing. And, we all know that that's a scary place, unless you do some major yogi meditation, which I've been trying to do, but just to know, and I never knew this, that we were not our thoughts, nor did I ever think this deep, right? Like it was survival mode constantly, 7 days a week for me. It
Hmm.
was like, I needed to just to get through this day. And in a weird way, people, that I have talked to that live a sober lifestyle say so, but like, when did you crash and burn? And I don't know if I've ever really crashed and burned in that sense, other than I think what to me crashing and burning is that feeling of just emptiness, of feeling like there's no purpose, like I'm not my own best friend. Like I couldn't even be, I almost felt like I couldn't, like from the inside out, like if you were to flip me, I
Hmm.
felt disgusting. There was like nothing there. There was like, I
Hmm.
had no identity.
Did anybody in your life tell you that you were drinking too much?
There would be a couple of people, yes, but you know, I would always, of course, never take responsibility and never, really take them seriously because I was like, well, what are you doing? Like,
Right.
you're not much better, in that sense. Or I'd just be like, I had this like saying, I don't trust people that are sober, that decide to live a sober lifestyle. I was like, there's obviously some demons that they're living. It's like, I was so ignorant to, the fact that like, this is everything that I thought was weak is actually the most courageous thing you can possibly do.
I think we have this, concept, this idea in our heads of what an alcoholic looks like.
Hmm.
And, I thought it's the guy under the bridge drinking out of a brown paper bag, or somebody passed out, or, in jail after, committing the terrible offense of
Yeah.
driving under the influence or something like that's what an
Yeah.
alcoholic looks like. An
Yeah.
alcoholic doesn't look
It's
like
not you. It's
a
not you. Yeah.
network news anchor who manages
Right.
to do her job every single day, or a
Right.
competitive ballroom dancer who manages to
Right.
knock it out of the park and win competitions every night. That's not an alcoholic.
No, no athlete or nobody in the entertainment industry. Yet
Right.
I would have I mean, if we did a survey, I think we would be shocked.
I think so too.
Yeah.
The
Now,
other
do you
thing that
believe that alcoholism, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay, finish your thing.
Oh, I was just wondering, like alcoholism, addiction, it's a disease.
It's Of course it's a disease.
Some people say no, and it's like I don't understand that, right? So, but that's not my job. My job is just to focus like on me and my sobriety. Yet I think because we have been so hesitant to talk about stuff like this, it's the reason for ignorance, I think.
Well, I think that, listen, for decades, the
Mm,
American Medical Association and doctors have been saying addiction is a disease of the brain.
yeah.
Similar to depression and anxiety. And by the way, they're all inextricably linked, because many, many people who suffer from depression and anxiety self-medicate with substances,
Yeah.
as you
Yes.
did and as I did, to numb, for me, the anxiety, for you, whatever feelings you were trying to not experience
Yes.
at that point.
Of course.
But, and yet polls still show that, I don't know, 40% of Americans think it's a moral failing. There are so many people who were, even after I wrote my book, would, well, why didn't you just stop? Or
No, that's
don't
not
you?
the way.
Yeah, it's like, or
It's
you
like
mustn't,
telling someone with an
yeah.
eating disorder, why don't you just eat a burger? Like, no, that's just not the
Or
way it
somebody with diabetes,
works.
just,
Right.
yeah, you can't just, it's not a willpower thing, and people aren't in their right minds when they're in the grip of this disease. Do you consider yourself an alcoholic?
I'm definitely an alcoholic and addict. Absolutely. Yes. 100%.
And when you made the decision to stop drinking 3 years ago, did something happen to spark that? You've been very open on your YouTube channel. I was really, really impressed by the courage it took for you to post videos of you looking wobbly from years ago
Oh,
on
that was
nights
hard to
out.
watch.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I did an hour-long special after my book came out, and we pulled an interview where I was so hungover and incapacitated and,
Oh, wow.
pickled by all the alcohol that I had. And just to give an example, and I had to leave the screening room when they were screening it. I couldn't watch it.
It reminds me of when Derek and I, we were at GMA and Diane Sawyer was interviewing us.
Hmm.
And my publicist, who is my publicist to this day, I believe said something like Diane Sawyer made a comment like, your kids are just, it was an Oscar party, right? We're coming from, rest in peace, but Prince's house. Like we were like, well, going there and then we had to do like a jive, right? 6 a.m. And there was no time to sleep. Like it was 5:30, we got straight to set. And I remember feeling so embarrassed because we reeked. I mean, I definitely reeked. I'm not going to speak for Derek, but like, I mean, this was years ago, right?
Hmm.
And ever since then, then the shame started to slowly, because
Yeah.
obviously I respect Diane Sawyer, right? Like that's the last thing. And then I'll never forget with Jason Kennedy when I was co-hosting with on E, and he straight up with Mike's Hot and everything was like, Cheryl, is that tequila? And I was like, oh no. I said, our mics are hot, but obviously, that's not what he was thinking, but that's all I was thinking. Is like, we're very resourceful as as an addict, and like there was always those to-go cups, no matter what, because I would just be so freaking nervous.
And you needed alcohol to soothe that
I thought that
nervousness.
would help, yes,
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't.
and maybe it doesn't for
Yeah.
long term, that's for sure. But during that time, whatever, I can say that a burger would soothe. I mean, it's just what you believe is what happens, right?
Yeah.
So it's like whatever it is.
Well, Stephen King once infamously said after he got sober that he had showed up to an interview on Good Morning America years and years ago, so hungover that he thought he was going to vomit on live television.
Oh my God,
So
that would have.
you're in great company for your under the influence interview
Yes.
on GMA.
Okay, good. I'm sure it's not the first time that the Diane
It's not
Sawyer
the
has
first
smelled
time.
alcohol.
Yeah, no, it's not the first time that's happened.
Oh goodness.
You decided to stop drinking. There wasn't one
Yes.
thing in particular, you say,
Well,
right?
no, my father was an alcoholic, and he passed away about 3.5 years ago. And when that happened, he was living in Thailand. He owned a bunch of strip clubs. Like I had this really weird friendship with my real dad from when I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
and had always felt that weird feeling of abandonment, which then led to me, I think, being attracted to men like that were not committed, that had, dark past, and that were abusive, to be quite honest. And my father was like, I put him up on this pedestal, and he always freaking disappointed me. But nothing he could have done. It was so weird because my mother raised me, but I looked up to him. He was like this man that I could never feel loved by, right? And that was a weird addiction in itself. And then my father passed, and my then fiance, now husband, came with me to Thailand. My dad, who was an attorney, lost all, like he completely just started turning into a vegetable. And when you take away Steve Burke's voice and his way of communication, you take everything away from him. And he became so sick in Thailand. You're allowed to drink in the hospital. Like, I don't know what's going on there. Like, there's no rules whatsoever. Like, we would come into his room, he'd have Jack on ice, and that's all he would drink. And it was like to the point where his body was just deteriorating, and he was dying. And a part of me I have so many unanswered questions, but I knew that if I didn't stop and make a promise to myself to stop drinking, that I was going to fall down the rabbit hole of having to find the nearest facility and have it just be something where I would crash and burn, So I just didn't want to tell anybody, because not even my fiance, because I didn't want the pressure of having to, what if I change my mind?
Yeah.
Because like I couldn't, back then, there was no way I went one day without even having a couple of vodka sodas and lime. Like there's no way. And then I started thinking, wow, sure. Am I like, can I really not go like a week? Like there was no, that would, that was way too much.
Yeah.
And then when we came home, I remember my body reacting in a different way, like to the alcohol. Like I used to never turn red. Like I said, functioning. I almost probably came across more sober than when I was sober. And I started getting hives. Like I would drink or smell alcohol, and all of a sudden I would break out into hives.
Hmm.
So it's weird. I know our bodies change every 7 years, but the fact that I reacted like that, like full on allergic reaction, no matter what alcohol, it's obviously subconsciously something, whether it's my body rejecting all this poison, after like drowning it with it, like for so many years. And then our engagement party happened. Kim Hershevek hosted it, and I took one fireball shot and I felt so angry and broke out into hives. And then I just quit that night of our engagement
Wow.
party.
You should read The Body Keeps Score.
Yes, I've heard of that. I definitely want to read
Yeah.
that. I have to write that down. Hold on.
Yeah. It's, I'll email it to you.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, it sounds like you had some sort of psychosomatic reaction to going to Thailand and seeing your dad in that
Yeah.
condition in that hospital room, and right up until his dying days, drinking, glasses full of Jack Daniels.
And that's not it, Elizabeth. I mean, like, I still don't know what the cause of death is. Like, there's just so much. I'm still going through PTSD. I think with the stripping business, I can't even imagine what type of trouble he was in.
Yeah. Yeah. So you made the decision to get sober. Was it a hard thing to make, a hard thing to do? I mean, how does that first day, when you wake up and think, today, for the first time in I don't know how many years, I'm not going to have an alcoholic drink?
Thank God for the hives, because I don't know if I'd be here today. Because
Because of the physical reaction you all of a sudden mysteriously began to have to alcohol, it helped you get through those early
And
days.
it sounds so like materialistic, but I had hives before from like allergies like all down my legs, and then like to have it on my face and neck and just to have that heat, I was just like, oh no, there's no way. There's no way. Like it doesn't make me feel good. It makes me feel angry because there
Hmm.
was not enough alcohol to do anything other than pee every 2 seconds. And I was like, this is not even working. I
I'm
don't
not getting
drink
the benefits from the
casual.
alcohol. I'm only getting the
Right.
hives.
And the hives and the anger. Like nobody
Yeah.
wants that at
Yeah.
all. And it's like, wedding is coming up. Like, it was just, and I think Matt did say I think after Thailand or maybe right before that, I was drinking a little much.
Yeah.
And I was like, of course, I found something else to turn it on and be like, well, you're doing this too much.
Yeah. How quickly did your life begin to change after you stopped?
Wow. Pretty quick. And I wouldn't say, okay, so a lot of people say, but weren't you more successful? Or like, yes, within myself, like something that I was missing, right, was like self-respect, self-love, self-esteem, and just that peace,
Hmm.
wanting to be better. Like all of a sudden, I've been very interested in online courses. I was a horrible student though when I was in school. But now I'm so curious, like that, I'm so clear-headed. And it also, though, the other side of it is I don't sleep. I don't need more than like 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I'm so OCD. I am busy, busy, busy because my new drug is productivity.
Okay. So you traded one really destructive one in for one that we celebrate in our culture.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've adopted like meditation is an everyday practice for me now, and that has helped.
You
But one
talked
day at a
about,
time.
yeah, no, it is just one day at a time. You talk about the fact that since getting sober, a lot of these feelings for you have come up.
Yeah,
We know that child abuse is a huge marker for substance abuse later in life. Like
for sure.
an enormous percentage of children who are abused grow up to be addicts of some kind.
Hmm.
Um, and you talked earlier about how since you've been sober, these feelings are coming up for you and are intense. How are
Yeah.
you handling those?
Oh, well, I'm learning just to And again, like I really am trying to practice what I preach because it's so much easier to say this. But I want to hold myself accountable because it's like, it's not easy to live in this uncertainty. And then sometimes I have
There's a lot
been
of
just,
uncertainty right now too.
oh, totally. And I've been
Yeah.
justifying my feelings. And there's also no need for that. There's like no explanation needed, right? Like you can just say, I feel it's basic stuff that I wish we could be taught in schools because it's
Hmm.
like I feel sad and that's okay and done. But guess what? The feeling is going to be there, feel it, but it will soon pass. And that's okay. Like it's better to feel it now than have it. And unfortunately, because this is my life and my path, but I am going back to like age 5. I don't even remember the timeline. My timeline is so off.
Hmm.
But like I'm going back to when I was a girl and honestly just not feeling. So I think I'm probably at like age 12 by now. And and it hasn't stopped, that child abuse went from back to back physical and mental abusive relationships, like until I moved here to LA when I was 21 back in 2006.
You've said about feelings, it's better out than in. I
Yeah.
really like that.
Thanks to
Explain it.
Emily Fletcher.
Yeah.
Well, she is, so I started doing these online courses and I got really into this meditation called Ziva. They're not a sponsor. I just totally believe in it. And it's 15 minutes. Kind of sounds like it's transcendental. Never done transcendental. I would love to one day, but she has always said at the end of her like 15-minute course, she always says better out than in. She even has a song that I will not, uh, I'm not a good singer, little tone deaf. So I will, yeah, bear you from that voice of mine. But it is so true. It's so true. It is better out than in, even though we were taught differently, or I was taught completely different. Like it
Me
was
too.
be humble, but not too humble. Be strong, but not too. So it's like, what the hell do you want me to be?
Yeah.
You know?
I think I was just taught be strong and work hard and don't ever show weakness and certainly my anxiety, which I had intensely as a
Yeah.
child, was I perceived very strongly as a weakness. So
My mom,
yeah,
it's interesting because my mom, who has, comes from first generation Filipino, just now is she feeling this anxiety. And it's really crazy, Elizabeth, because she talk about like rags to riches, freaking worked her butt off to be who she is. But unfortunately, money isn't everything, but
yeah,
coming from poverty for her, it was.
yeah,
And she totally ignored her heart,
yeah.
her feelings. And so she's like, recently, she's like, Cheryl, what are these feelings in my stomach? Like my stomach. I'm like, Mom, that's anxiety.
Yeah, my dad is first generation from Puerto Rico and same thing, intense
Yeah.
poverty, ended up being the first person in his family to get a driver's license, to graduate high
Wow.
school, to go to college, got a
Wow.
master's degree courtesy of the
Yeah.
military. But that sort of, hard work and discipline I saw that in spades and that was
Yeah.
great. But when you bury everything else, it's like the title of that book, The Body Keeps Score. It eventually comes back to you. And my
Oh,
dad's much
whew.
older now, and I think doing a lot of thinking about his life and, letting feelings come in for the very first time. And I think he finds it uncomfortable.
Oh my gosh, my mom, as soon as she sold her company, which was recent, that's when it all, they say like, don't, and that's my stepdad will never retire. He's a dentist. And I always say he's going to die in someone's mouth because he will never retire, right? Like he
Yeah.
just won't. But I understand now, but I don't believe in using a band-aid, right? Like it is something that I think this is what makes life in a way exhilarating
Yeah.
is just not knowing.
It's scary though. I don't like
Oh
the not
my
knowing.
God, I
It's a
know.
very uncomfortable place to be. I describe, I've talked about being in a hallway, waiting for, okay, that door closed. When is the next one going to open? And having the
Right.
patience to, be okay during that time and not be spinning out in worry and
Yeah.
anxiety. It's going to be a very uncomfortable place to be.
Especially like when just recently have I found or I guess I'm not forcing it, but I'm really trying to find and believe in my higher power, right? Like because with
Hmm.
the program, it's
Yeah,
important. I was raised Catholic. I was baptized
me
Catholic,
too.
and I just never connected to anyone as far as the priest goes, right? Like I was really disconnected. I was like, just take me to Sunday school, give me a donut. But like, that was about it, right? And so, look, my mom is very religious, but like, I just never found a real connection. And then, like, you say God, I say sunset. This guy who looks like Jesus walking down Sunset. Like, I'm just like, this is all weird. Like, I was never that girl who believed in Santa Claus. I grew up way too fast, and it was very much reality in that sense. And it's kind of sucks, but like, I'm trying to find this connection because I know that we can't do it all, right? Like, there has to be a way to surrender. And I never related to the word surrender to, however you want to say it, God, higher power,
Mm-hmm.
spirituality. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
We know that from statistics that 40 to 60% of people who try to get sober relapse. It's very, very
wow.
common, by the way. It's also not any different from people who relapse from other chronic diseases like
Uh-huh.
hypertension, asthma, or type 1 diabetes. And you've been very honest in the last couple of months on your YouTube channel about having drink cravings
Yeah.
recently in the last few months.
Mm.
And I remember listening to you describe that and thinking, boy, I don't know a person in recovery who hasn't had that,
Mm.
that I call it that lightning bolt that comes out of nowhere and
Yeah.
and that's why you
Spiral.
have to be, for me, you have to have a solid program.
Yes.
A friend of mine in the program has always talks about, and he had, a terrible drug addiction and had to go to rehab multiple times. And he's one of the smartest people I've ever heard talk about, the disease of addiction and his own recovery. And I
Mm.
remember early on hearing him talk about being spiritually fit because he had to be ready for the knife fight in the alley. Because he said that's what the disease is like. It's like being jumped in an alley and you have to fight quickly and be able to resist that lightning bolt of, oh
Yeah.
God, that looks good. I want one.
Temptation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I know exactly why. I've been going through like personal issues and everything's been so uncertain. Like, I'm 37. Am I going Oh, I guess that makes no sense if this is end airing in October. But like
Yeah.
that question mark of just how long can I live as a dancer, right? Like, let's be real here. Like, a lot of women in their early 30s retire. Like, this is not a sport that you could last forever, and especially as a woman.
Right.
Um, and nor do I want to be that person who looks like old grandma over here, barely kicking her leg up, and then you've got like these young, like, so like, look, there is a sense of maybe that's my ego talking, but still, it's like, I don't know. I have so many question marks. And again, and that's how scary it is, like, to live in the uncertainty. Of course, I want to just pick up, I pointed here because this is where all my booze used to be. But
Hmm.
of course, I want to pick up a bottle of Tito's and just like hide in the dark corner and no one find me for 2 weeks.
Describe the situation, yeah, that you found yourself in Hawaii. I think you said somebody sent up a bottle of champagne to your room.
Yeah, the hotel. The
Yeah.
hotel, but they were being nice, obviously, but yeah, I never realized how hard it was because it never crossed my mind, Elizabeth, ever. Not
Mm.
once. Like, alcohol to me, it wasn't, I had no opinion. It was like, my husband can drink, but he doesn't really drink that much. My friends, fine. And then it was my friend's birthday, and she had this big birthday bash at her place. And I mean, it was like so nice to see everybody. A lot of the dancers were there, and now we only do one season a year, so we haven't really seen each other as much. But like, then that's when everyone gets to feel good, music's going, it's nighttime, and then I start to like, uh-oh, oh no, like, this is when I want to drink because everyone is feeling so good, and I'm feeling even worse. Like, I just get more and more insecure as the night goes on, and I'm like, she's my best friend, I can't just leave, even though all I wanted to do, it was so hard for me to leave my house to go because
Yeah.
I knew that. And then you have people like, why aren't you drinking? Why can't you just have one? I'm like, I can't even talk to you right now because the music is so loud. And like, if they only knew, right? You just don't
Yeah.
know, like what you said earlier.
No,
You
you
have to
just
know.
never know. In one of the seasons of Dancing with the Stars, you were partnered with AJ McLean. who was sober.
Last season, yeah.
Yeah. And what was that? Did you tell him that you were also newly sober? Did you confide in him?
Yeah, so this is how it all started. So our friendship started even like before the season officially
Mm-hmm.
started and before we knew we were partners. So we were originally going to do a podcast. I was going to do one on my own, and then AJ and his mentor Renee Elizondo, they were going to have their own. Then one of the producers from iHeart was like, "You three have the same story, and how cool would it be to have you three sober, different generations, talk about your sobriety and mental health? Like this is perfect." Cut to we get on a Zoom call, and AJ's like, "Yeah, pandemic, whole tour got canceled. I think I'm gonna be doing Dancing with the Stars." And I'm like, what? Right? So that's how it all started. And I was like, oh
Are
my
you
God, you have to
kidding?
request. No. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Like out of all there's a lot of people here in this town that probably their tours got canceled too. And it was, I mean, even the producer had no idea. This was way before, the cast was even announced or the pros.
Wow.
So it was almost like we were meant to be. But what was hard for me to witness would be, I'm not necessarily known to be the nicest teacher in the world.
Are you serious?
No, I'm like, I am a taskmaster, but like, I think this has a lot to do with the way I was coached. And I just, no BS, right? Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything unless you deserve it. Like, I just feel like my words of affirmation could probably be something I work on. But yeah, I only know this like crazy strict way. And sometimes for someone who's newly sober, I was like, oh no, like I never want to be the reason, even though I know I'm not the reason, right? But like, I never want to trigger anybody in that
Yeah.
sense. But I
Yeah.
also need to do my job.
Right.
So it was finding a fine line. But when we danced together, I wasn't part of a program, and nor did AJ shove it down my throat. But he mentioned it quite a bit. And then recently, I keep hearing the word white knuckling or dry
Mm-hmm.
drunk and I'm like, oh my God, is this who? But like, then I'm saying I've been in therapy consistently like 3 times a week, but there's nothing like the program. Now I
No, there
know,
really
like
isn't.
it's magical, and I honestly have to thank them because they didn't shove it down my throat, which is why I think I wanted to try it, like, and actually do it. And thank God for Zoom, because if it were an in-person meeting, I'm not sure if I'd show up.
This pandemic has been so, oh, that's so interesting that you found the Zoom meeting easier to go to than the
Oh yeah,
in-person meeting, because we know the pandemic has been very hard on people because so many people had trouble with the transition of in-person meetings to Zoom meetings
I
and
have
felt a
nothing to
loss of
compare it with.
connection. Oh yeah, there's nothing quite like, sitting in a room with a bunch of other people
But
who,
with social anxiety, it's
oh, yeah.
scary.
Well, listen, my first, good Lord, the first year I went to meetings, I would sneak in at the very last minute with a baseball cap on and sit in the back and not talk to
Totally.
anybody. It was, I did it all wrong.
Yeah.
And now some of the people I'm closest to in my entire life I have met through the program. They're just
Yeah.
amazing, amazing people. And many of them women who have, done a lot of the same things I did and have helped me, deal
It's
a little bit with
it's
your own
it's the
shame.
it's the power of just listening. Like with Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
everyone has to mute themselves and it's really nice just to be able to not interrupt or feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
someone's interrupting me. It forces you, and it's like, but then it makes. Sometimes I just want to call in and listen, and sometimes I don't want to have to talk. But
Yeah. So how long has AJ been sober?
a little over, I think, a year and a half or a year. So when he started dancing, he celebrated his year of being sober towards the end. So I want to say like he got sober in February of 2019 or 2019.
So you've got
Um,
that's actually, I love the name of the podcast, Pretty Messed Up.
right? And
You
it
guys
says it
like
all
just go there.
totally. Because like our brains are just different, right? Like the way we think, it's just, I mean, I find it very entertaining.
And on the podcast, you talk to other people in recovery.
Yep. Yeah. So during the show, during Dancing with the Stars, so obviously we started when the show started. He requested me and we drove each other crazy. Thank God for Renee, that third person trying to calm his friend down. And also mind you, I was really tough on someone who was newly sober, like shame on me. But it's all out of love anyway. And so we did that. And then we had Dancing with the Stars. Of course, we had pros come on because it was like during the season. Now, since we've wrapped, which was a while ago now, we've had only like mental health related guests or, I mean, all types of amazing. And I've learned so much. And there's this podcast world is something I look for. I love it so much because I don't really feel like I have an audience, even though hopefully there is, right? But like, it just makes me feel like I can be even more vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it helps to talk about it.
And this YouTube channel that you started, tell me about the decision to do that, because it is searingly honest. I watched a couple episodes. And the one where you're talking about dating abusive boyfriends in high school, I just wanted to go, oh.
I know.
As the mom of 2 teenagers, my heart went out to you.
Thank you.
And
I know. It's kind of the same way as this podcast. It's like, I feel like I've been so edited on Dancing with the Stars, right? Like Disney, like, and that's okay. It's also not about us. It's about our celebrities, and that's okay. Like, and that's why I do it. To help other people, right? And with this, I was like, okay, but I, again, have been so just open and honest in general because I don't know any other way. I'm not trying to be an actor. I'm not trying to do anything other than just, take my life day by day and not trying to like use stuff to no, this is who I am. This is all I know. And I find it very therapeutic in a selfish way, but I also know from hearing people and seeing their comments that they can relate. Like they know that I am you, like I am them. Like I accept maybe I might have the courage to talk about it, but then maybe me having the courage to talk about it can then make you talk about it and stop something from maybe spiraling down that rabbit hole that we don't want to go into.
Right. Well, Cheryl Burke, the YouTube channel is fantastic. The podcast fantastic, but just you and your willingness to speak out about this. There are so many women out there who drink the same way you drank. And I'm just so thrilled to see that. I'm sorry for the insomnia because that is like, I share it. That's a terrible thing.
Oh gosh.
But life does get much clearer, I think.
Yeah.
So I wish you
and thank you
much clarity.
So much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I feel like you started this whole trend for me in my eyes. So like I've been following you and your story, and it's very inspiring. So thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you so much for listening today to Heart of the Matter. You can find this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website at drugfree.org/podcast. And as a reminder, if you need help with a loved one who is struggling with substance use, you can text 55753 or visit drugfree.org. We'll talk to you soon.